Figure out how to stand up.
Next time at the Alamo Draft House, I'm going to be peeing next to some lady who's like kind of squatting next to this weird urinal thing that's supposed to be unisex.
It's absolutely terrible. This is going to totally backfire on them. But this article talks about how if you can take away people's sex, male, female, and try to rewrite the reality of science of what it is, then the government can start saying there is no mother, father, no son, no daughter. It's you're the legal guardian of that person that lives in your home. And you know what? Maybe,
but we mold their mind during the day.
Exactly. And maybe we decide you're not fit to be their legal guardian anymore, but you're not their mother or father, or they're not your child, because the family structure has been completely eliminated.
Oh yeah, that's what they want. They want kids living in dormitories, being raised by the state, being subjected to that brainwashing mind control. Not about individuality, not about freedom. It's all about this weird collective where you can't say certain words because they may offend somebody. You know, it goes back to the old adage.
And it changes from, you know,
sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And the fact that they don't teach kids this anymore is just atrocious.
Sticks and stones might be breaking some bones, though, if you try to...
By the way, talking about Trump winning the nomination, we have a special video from Alex Jones coming up where he goes into this and basically declares Trump winner of the presidency, because I mean, you look at what Hillary is right now. She's in free fall. They're probably going to try to sneak Biden in through the back door. But, you know, people are going to be like, wait, he didn't go through any scrutiny at all. We're just going to say, oh, Joe Biden, creepy Joe gets it. Go buy a shotgun.
Joe. Yeah, can't wait
buy a shotgun.
Can't wait for those hit pieces to come out. Yeah, did you see me trying to shoot the shotgun? Fail. We also have an interview with Libertarian candidate running for president John McAfee, as well as Ron Paul stopped by the Alex Jones Show today. All that's coming right up.
Dr. Paul, thank you so much for spending time with us. You look great. It's good to have you with us via your Skype connection.
Thank you, Alex. Good to see you today.
We've got about a 2 or 3 second delay, so I'll try to just, not jump in too much, just with a few questions. You heard what I threw out. Where would you like to start? With the moves to censor? I don't think I've ever seen with Facebook and all the rest of them being caught, censorship of this magnitude.
I think we live in an age where there's no understanding and no respect whatsoever for personal liberty and personal privacy. The founders understood it much better. They tried to protect us against a big government that would come in and destroy that. But there is a collusion between big business, corporatism, and big government that are in control, so therefore they can control the output. It used to be that newspapers did it in 3 major networks, and we understood it, and then it changed when there were more cable stations and internet stations and all. But they haven't quit. They're still challenging us. And you're right, the IRS has not been kind to us. They've been after us quite a few different times on some of our organizations, and they continue to do it. They'd like to bankrupt us, through all the money you have to spend to try to defend oneself. But I think what we're witnessing today is a result of an era ending. And I've talked about this for maybe 5 or plus years, about the end of an era. Because I believe the era of big government, the progressive era, really exhausted itself probably at the end of the last century. And now we have just been fidgeting and trying to keep things together. And that's why, the political parties are in shambles, the economy's in shambles, civil liberties are in shambles. But the real problem is that the system we have today isn't working, it's ending. Keynesian economics doesn't work. That model is bad and never worked, but that was the substitute for fascism and communism. And the 20th century did a pretty good job at smashing it, because it's a total failure. And there are still some who would like to be socialists and think that Venezuela is the way to go and all this nonsense. But the markets are very powerful. The market said that fascism and communism failed, but the substitute, the American substitute of Keynesianism, economic planning, central banking, inflationism, fiat money, and running our lives, regulating our lives, taking away our liberties, and also this obsession with us believing that we are so exceptional that we can tell the rest of the world how to live. And we should be exceptional in dealing with our own problems and setting a good example. But so I think the mess that we're in today is the end of this era, and without anybody admitting this, we and those in the freedom movement have been trying to warn people of this and giving them an option. And quite frankly, I think we're doing fine there, even though, like you mentioned, Alex, on the introduction, statism and big governments is alive and well. But they're bankrupt, so they will end. Just as our empire will end, Keynesian economics will fail. The central banking system is going to fail. We just have to concentrate on it to energize another generation that there is an option for this, there is an alternative. And of course, that's what I've been working on for quite a few years.
Absolutely, Dr. Paul. Expanding on that, looking at what the so-called left is doing, allied with the establishment Republicans in this country, similarly in Europe, where I know you've traveled and spoken extensively of well, they now, because they were discredited last century, as you said, are instead just trying to dumb everyone down and really much overthrow reality and overthrow the engines of free market that are left, because they just can't compete with that even existing. Even though it brings down the civilization, they'd rather rural people, not be able to take care of themselves. They'd rather city people not be able to take care of themselves. They'd rather the whole country and the whole world be poor and rule a huge junk pile instead of a great civilization. And so my concerns are, what do you see them doing in their death throes? Because even most mainline analysts are starting to agree with you that we're coming to the end of a bubble, that no matter what the establishment does, they're not going to be able to suppress change. More and more young people are waking up. So clearly, I agree with you, this great turning that you've talked about for decades, but that you've said is very close for 5 years, is pretty much here. But how do you expect the empire to strike back? I mean, I think we're seeing it. Open, naked authoritarianism, but doesn't that only accelerate the fall of their system?
Well, yes, they're a failure, but they will strike out. And I think that what they have going for them right now is the dumbing down of America. So in many ways, they have been successful by getting hold of the public school system and teaching people, bad economics and bad foreign policy and all the things that are wrong. But at the same time, the failure is there. I think they know that the failure is there, but they will strike out and they will become more authoritarian. And I think that is exactly what they're doing. And it isn't a partisan thing when you know that the Nancy Pelosi's of the world and the John Boehners of the world were much more buddies than anybody realized, but that continues. The parties mean very little. But I think if nothing else, this current election cycle that's going on represents the dumbing down of America. But then again, does that mean we should be exhausted and run for the hills, or should we continue the fight? Obviously, I'm here for the fight, and to me, it's an intellectual fight. And we have to beat them with better ideas, and I think there is a receptive audience out there. But what they have power because they're in control right now. But what we have on our side is that ideas have consequences. You can't stop ideas. Even the armies and the governments can't stop ideas if their time has come.
Joining us now is John McAfee. Welcome, Mr. McAfee.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
I'm very interested to hear your voice. I think the Libertarian Party needs your voice. I think America needs your voice in the discussion. We are threatened with a lot of vital issues. I think the border issues, the trade issues that we see that Donald Trump has tapped into, I think those are vital issues. But there's another vital issue that nobody is talking about, and that is the big brother aspect of massive surveillance. And there's many other issues that I don't really see candidates like Gary Johnson addressing. 4 years ago when he was running, he basically focused his campaign on government redefining marriage, on being pro-abortion, and on pot legalization, which is fine, except that those first two things are not even necessarily something that all libertarians agree on. We had pro-life libertarians when I was in the Libertarian Party. A lot of people don't believe that the government should have any role in defining marriage. And when it comes to pot legalization, that's fine, but I think we need to focus on the broader problems of drug prohibition in general. Then I was very disturbed to see that he's picking William Weld, a guy who has supported assault weapon bans. He has supported other gun control measures. He supported the Iraq War 10 months after the invasion. He's failed to oppose the Patriot Act. As a matter of fact, he worked as a DEA enforcer for Ed Meese. And this is a guy who gave us a civil asset forfeiture. Now, he eventually forced Ed Meese out for personal corruption charges, but he should have forced him into jail for giving us something like civil asset forfeiture. So I'm very disturbed to see the Libertarian Party moving in the direction of having these career politicians, which is what Gary Johnson and William Weld are, in my opinion. I think they need to be brought into the 21st century with issues like you're addressing. Talk to us about the vitality of cybersecurity and what we need to do to protect us from the government.
Well, with your permission, sir, I'd like to talk about something far more important.
Sure.
We're talking about issues. but there's an issue that absolutely no one has addressed. And that is, when Dwight Eisenhower left office in the 50s, he warned us about something called the military-industrial complex. That connection between government and industry, which would only cause greater power in both of those. Gary Johnson talks about presidential debates. If we don't get into the debate, we're lost, so he's suing the debate commission. Well, we know that's not going to go to court until after the election. We know how the court process works, so it's utter nonsense. At the Las Vegas debate that Penn Jillette of Penn and Teller put together, I did the debate like everybody else. In my closing statement, I got up and said, what you have watched is utter, complete nonsense, fabricated by the media in the 60s and perpetrated by the media for the media. And let me explain. What do you have in a presidential debate? You have opening statements and closing statements written by speech writers, not the candidate himself. You have a candidate that has been coached by dozens
As a matter of fact, I think we lost transmission there for a moment. One of the founders of the Libertarian Party was a speechwriter for Goldwater, who had that famous comment, extremism in defense of liberty is no vice, and moderation in defense of justice is no virtue, if I got that correct. I may not have gotten that exactly right, but you're exactly right.
Remember when the American president boldly proclaimed a respect of liberty and the freedoms expressed in the Constitution of the United States?
We should give particular attention to the needs of those countries which share our view of the world crisis. Our view of the world crisis is that countries are entitled to national sovereignty and independence. That is all we have ever suggested. That is the purpose of our aid, to make it more possible. Now, if a country has ceased to choose national sovereignty or ceased to choose a national independence, then, of course, our aid becomes less useful.
Well, take a look at who is steering the ship today. The New World Order panderer-in-chief, President Obama, was recently in Vietnam hyping the prospect of slashing tariffs on products imported into the United States, aggressively pushing a multinational corporation's sovereign-killing trade deal linking 40% of the global economy into a full-blown smackdown on the already struggling U.S. economy. The L.A. Times writes, ordinarily, a presidential administration would wait until Congress ratifies a trade agreement before putting it into force with member nations. But with just 8 months left in office and presidential candidates Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, and Bernie Sanders all against the deal, Obama and his advisors appear to have concluded that they must speed up that lengthy process to preserve the trade pact. This president of ours is blatantly taking this country down and spreading his belly full of total loathing for America across the globe. This is the same president that signed the NDAA in the middle of the night after threatening to veto it, a document guaranteeing that American citizens can be disappeared by the authorities without any explanation, much less their rights.
These people are saying that the passing of the bill, basically it means to them that the Rubicon has been crossed. That this means America will become complete and possibly irreversible totalitarian military state.
Well, then our only hope is some defective armed force members.
I think that's our only chance, is the military needs to enforce our Constitution, and our congressmen are trampling over the rules that were established over 200 years ago. And that's the whole problem. There's too much corruption in the executive branch and in the congressional.
The same president behind a draft to install a government official into each home to oversee your children. The document states, the first step in systematically embedding effective family engagement practices in educational settings is to establish a culture where families are seen as assets and partners in children's development. The same president that lied his tail off to get into office in order to enact globalist New World Order directives while simultaneously rewarding the corporate demons running the central banks with toppled regimes and more central banks. Obama is the first president in U.S. history to not see a single year of 3% GDP growth. That